Okay, in this example problem, I'm going to do some line coding with NRZ, NRZL, NRZI, and RZ signals. In this problem, I am given the waveform, and it asks me to determine the bit sequence. Okay, and basically we've got different rules for each of these different types of line codings. And the NRZ is the simplest. It's a 0 for a 0, 0 voltage for a 0, and a positive V for a 1. And so when we're up here, we get 1s, and when we're down there, we get 0s. That's the easiest one. NRZL isn't much more difficult. The rule for NRZL is that you get a positive V naught, V with the subscript 0, for a 0, and you get a negative V naught for a 1. So it's kind of like an upside down NRZ, except that it goes both positive and negative rather than 0 and positive. And so we get 0s here, we get 1s when we're down, 0s while we're up. Okay, and that seems to make sense the way I've done it. I gotta make these things stick to the paper. Okay. NRZI is the trickiest of these, and NRZI, the rule there says that a 0 bit gives no transition at the start of a bit period, and a 1 gets a transition at the start of the bit period. And each of these little horizontal things in time is a bit period. Okay, so here we have the time axis, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. bit periods. So these are the bit periods, and if the previous non-zero signal was negative, that means we didn't have a transition at the beginning of this first bit period, and the voltage stayed negative. And no transition at the start of the bit period means we have a 0. So every time we have a situation like this where there's no transition at the beginning of a bit period, that signifies that there was a 0 in that bit period. Okay. Similarly, every time there's a transition at the beginning of a bit period, we have a 1. Here we have 3 1s in a row. Here we have a 1, a 1 there, and 0s here. Okay, so you can see that a 1 gives a change, a transition. Okay, 2 1s in a row give a little blip, 3 1s in a row give a little squiggle, and here we have a 1, a 0, and a 1. Okay, so that follows that rule. Next we have the RZ, and the rule for RZ is that a 0 gives a pattern that starts negative voltage and goes up to 0 volts in a single bit period, and that a 1 starts at a positive voltage and then in the middle of the bit period goes down to 0. So they both have transitions in the middle of every bit period. The 1s are up like this, and the 0s are the downward pointing pattern. Okay, so these are the 0s, and up above here these are the 1s. Okay, hope this is reasonably straightforward and that this video helps. Thanks for listening.